If people don't remember any of those moving parts, President Paul, what is one takeaway that you want people to have? And then we'll ask the family what's one takeaway. But let's start with President Paul, and then we'll close out with the family.
Um, I think the key takeaway people need to understand is, voting matters, right? Who we vote for, vetting these candidates prior to taking office matters. Making sure we got candidates not only at the local level but the state level, that when things like this happen, they're going to enforce the law. And so the key takeaway for me that I want people to take away from this is, all politics are local. We wouldn't have to be, asking and pleading to the governor and state AG to get involved if we had a local district attorney that was willing to properly investigate the case, if her team was willing to treat uh, this couple like they were the victims, because someone did permanently get injured in this situation. Again, it's not a situation where a gun went off and nobody got hurt, and maybe you're dismissing the charges. I mean, I wouldn't probably accept that, but I wouldn't be fighting probably as hard if nobody had got hurt. Still not a good proper precedent to set, in my opinion. So I guess I probably would still fight, but I'm fighting 10 times harder because somebody is permanently injured. And so it's disappointing to me when this district attorney swore me, myself, and the rest of my executive committee team in back in January, um, to do the very same thing that I'm doing as part of the oath I swore to uphold. When I finally have to, you're the one that I'm addressing about this, your first reaction to that conversation is to tell me to get the hell out. That's a problem. And so again, as voters, we have to ask ourselves, is that the type of person we want in leadership, in a position that carries so much weight, to be leading the community, that when, hey, something happens in our community, she's going to pick and choose which cases she will take, which ones she won't take, based on political basis, based on right and wrong. And because there's a reason that case kind of got swept under the rug, for almost a year and a half. Politically, I'm assuming maybe she didn't want, because it involved a Latino shooter and a black couple. So I'm just going to remain neutral on it. And then after it's over with, then I'll just sweep it under the rug and move on. Well, that's a problem. It's also a problem when your office have dropped the ball on other cases like Jakisha Brown that I brought up, who, person got away, kidnapper got away. Other cases that I brought up at the press conference where people have gotten off due to technicalities by her office, and I've asked questions about that and what processes been put in place to improve it. And then you gaslight me like there's no mistakes and these things hasn't happened or these things have been reported on. So I think the biggest takeaway for me is, hey, all politics are local. People need to be following us on Facebook, following us on Instagram, following us on social media, because we're going to continue to hold elected officials accountable. I know that's something that our branch, historically, at least since the passing of Reverend John C. Stewart, has not been doing a good enough job of. And since my ascension and the rest of my team that's involved on our executive team ascension into leadership, that's going to change. And so as that change, people need to be plugged in on what's going on. And so that come election time, you'll know who you need to be supporting as a voter come election time.
Mhm.
President, thank you so much. And then we're going to close out with the family again. If people don't remember the specific shared, or even some of the larger themes that we've talked about, what is a takeaway you would like for people to have as we conclude with you?
Same thing the president just reiterated. It is so important to exercise your right to vote, because one thing is true. We all get in uproar and we get our boots on the ground when it's time for that presidential election, but it needs to happen in a more intimate setting for us. We need to realize how important it is for us to vote on the local level. The elections that take place in our cities and communities in our state is so much bigger than the media like to put on for with the presidential election. It's all glitz and glamour and lights and cameras and actions when that presidential election comes about. But we have to really, 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 really exercise the right that our ancestors fought and died for, which is the right to vote, because that's where our voice gets heard. If we just sit back and don't realize the importance of that, that then, we are harming ourselves. We're not seeing the bigger picture, and we're harming ourselves. So go on.
I reiterate the same thing that my wife said and President Paul. Like the great leader Malcolm X said, we have to become more politically conscious and educated on the people that we elect and put into these offices. It's very important that we understand the importance of voting on a local level, because these are the type of laws that affect us on a daily basis. The judges that we put on the benches, the DAs that are elected to prosecute these particular cases that come before them. So it's very important to know exactly who these candidates are, what they represent, and what they stand for. Even though they may look like us, like it's always been said before, all skin folk is not kinfolk. And Miss Patsy Austin-Gatson is a perfect example of someone who is not like us. She obviously would rather be of some other race. It appears to me she is someone who is a soulless person. Unfortunately, I had to say so many negative things about her, but the interaction that we had at church, meeting her and being introduced by our pastor, and she directly looking my wife in the face and telling her, "Thank God you're still alive, and pray." That was her only response. So for people like her, we need to make sure that we're exercising our rights to vote and getting those people who are not doing the job out of the office.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes.
Just one quick thing. Let me say this. Some of the people that's in elected office, I don't know a lot of these people personally. I knew of them during my time as first vice president and political action committee chair and legal redress chair at one point in time, but I did not know them. So I'm still trying to get a feel for a lot of the people. Even her, like I said, a lot of people, text me after she swore us in wanting to know why, because I didn't know the background, I didn't know the history. And I'm sure that's how a lot of voters are, that sometimes they're not informed. If I'm president, I didn't know. A lot of other people I'm sure don't know. But I want to send something to a lot of our faith-based leaders. I've been meeting with a lot of different pastors of different churches and warning them not to endorse candidates when they're running, because unless you following what our organization is doing and you actively involved within our organization, coming to our committee meetings, you don't know what you don't know. And you ruin your reputation by doing that. I know she's built up a lot of goodwill with a lot of the community through Mr. Travis Gatson. And from all intents and purposes, everybody I talked to, her husband is a really good dude. I think he used to be in law enforcement for a very long time. But what I will say to those people who have a relationship with him, your relationship with him does not necessarily need to be support for her, because he's not the district attorney. She is. He's not making these decisions or making these final calls. She is. So I would say to a lot of those faith-based leaders and other community leaders that are afraid, or I wouldn't even necessarily say afraid, you feel like it's going to cause contention with your relationship with her husband as a means to not wanting to come out against her. I mean, you gotta question whether that's a real relationship or not, because whatever relationship you all have with her husband shouldn't affect your relationship from the reality of how she's governing as a district attorney. So I want to put that on the record, because I know she's built up a lot of goodwill off her husband's name and reputation. And unless he's going to run for district attorney in 2028, or unless he's going to step up and take over as district attorney, these people shouldn't allow that relationship that they have with her husband keep them from seeing the reality of how she's been governing as district attorney. And I just want that to be on record.